Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. It's Friday night. We're about 48 hours from the Orlando City game. Tough to watch. We will talk all about it. I don't know if we'll have as much to talk about tonight as we normally do, but it was still a game, and Inter Miami played it, and we are going to talk about it. So, other than that, how you feeling today, my man?
Yeah, the vibes aren't as great as it's been in the last few weeks. We finally drew a game, finally kept a clean sheet, 1 point away from home. Normally, in regular circumstances, I would have definitely taken this with both my hands. Um, it just seems like a bit of a deflating game. Sort of halted our momentum halfway, and it wasn't a great watch. So, shame that we weren't able to get all 3 points, but overall, a few positives to take away from it, but nothing major happened really.
Yeah, kind of a boring, slow game. It felt like early on it might be an exciting game, and then just sort of it just dragged on and on and on, and it never really got exciting again. Um,
I blame you. You predicted the 0-0 scoreline and it came true. I
yeah.
told you to go for a 6-1.
Here's the thing about MLS is that even though yesterday's game, after Orlando City was really struggling on defense, and or 2 nights ago's game, they were really struggling on defense. Even though they won over the weekend, they gave up a ton of shots, a ton of chances. There was no reason that this Inter Miami team, even without Lionel Messi, shouldn't have been able to create a lot more opportunities. And yet MLS is weird like that sometimes, where a game goes in a way that no one should have predicted. And I said that when I made the prediction that there was no reason that this game should end 0-0. And that's why I think this is just going to be one of those weird 0-0 games. Before we talk about the game, though, because listen, we will go over the big moments, of which there were few. We will talk about Orlando City. We'll talk about the tactics. We'll talk about everything Inter Miami related, and we'll give out some awards and all of that good stuff. But before we do, because I think this is a more interesting topic right now, I want to talk about Federico Redondo, who is even closer to coming back. And the reason I bring him back, because it does feel like I've mentioned him every episode, is that Tata Martino was asked today whether Federico Redondo was days away from returning or weeks away from returning. And Tata Martino said days. He is not available for tomorrow night's game against DC United. He's still on the unavailability report, but it seems like he's coming back. And I thought we could partner that conversation with Ian Frey, who is officially listed as questionable for tomorrow night's game. So injury news is all positive. There hasn't been any additions to the injury list in quite some time. Hopefully, I'm not jinxing that, but no alien abductions forthcoming. Redondo almost back.
Florida.
Redondo coming back. Ian Frey back. He might not be available tomorrow, but he's back. It's a great time, and this roster feels like it's coming together in a way that's really exciting. Not that really played out on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I will say this. Wednesday night's game was a little bit weird. Didn't feel like a rivalry game. But if this was Inter Miami like 3 months ago, we would have probably lost that game. So a step in the right direction. We didn't concede in the first 10 minutes. So that was great. And now the fact that we're peaking at the right time and a lot of our players are coming back from injury couldn't feel better. We've got some really important players coming back. I'm not sure what the news on Diego Gomez is, how far away he is, but having Federico Redondo is just going to really, really help that midfield balance. And I'm excited, man. Ian Frey, I really want to see him get a run out soon. I know tomorrow might be too early for him, but hopefully over the next week and a half, he gets some minutes on the pitch, because that's going to be an exciting watch when he gets on.
When Redondo comes back, is that the first time we're going to see Julian Gressel on the bench, start a game on the bench?
I think we're going to see Benjamin Kramaski on the bench.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll be honest.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the game. Here's the starting lineup. It was a 4-3-3 of sorts. Back line has been what we've gone with. Drake Callender in goal, obviously. A midfield of Busquets, Gressel, and Kramaski, which is the same from the prior game in the win against Montreal, and then a front three without Messi, but with Robert Taylor, Luis Suarez, and Matías Rojas, three guys that we feel good about. Now that we've seen the game play out, thoughts on the decision to start this starting 11?
I would have gone with this. Maybe change it up a little bit, but I would have gone with this. I think in terms of the personnel on the pitch, this was the best way to go with it. I'm thinking maybe Ruiz, but Orlando had a few chances, but they didn't necessarily catch us on transition. So the issues that we face normally in other games, it didn't seem to materialize as much in this game. So I thought the midfield balance was okay. The issue was with the final third, and that's what surprises me the most because there's enough talent in these front three players with maybe Kramaski and Gresso in behind them to be able to break that deadlock and break that low block that Orlando City was playing. So I was surprised we didn't have more final third product. But I would have gone with these players. I would have maybe changed the positioning a little bit more. But yeah, it doesn't. No complaints from Tata on this one.
Yeah, I think it was the right decision to start Negri and give Jordi Alba just 30 minutes off the bench, 20 minutes off the bench, whatever it ended up being. Yeah, I think this was the right front three. The midfield, I think we have the same complaints as we always do, but knowing that this is what Tata likes to do and knowing that he really loves having Julian Gressel out there, didn't feel like there was any other real options other than potentially David Ruiz in for Kramaski. But, I think to me that's a toss-up, at least going into the game. And then this is the front three, and we were really excited to see Matías Rojas get a chance to be the offensive outlet, play that Lionel Messi role, play on that right wing, which is his natural position that he is most in favor of, and get out there and see what he can do, because everything he's done so far has been really exceptional. Didn't really turn out like we would have wanted, but yeah, let's just get into it. Big moments.
I have a question before we move on. Do you think he played the right wing position?
Yes. And I'm sure, to me, Matías Rojas is the most interesting talking point of this entire game. So I'm sure we'll talk about him a lot, both in the tactics and in awards, I'm sure. But yeah, sometimes where you float on the field isn't necessarily your position. And so I would have still called him the right winger in this game, even though he was coming back for the ball quite a bit and trying to play those long balls over the top. Anything else before we get into the big moments?
The only thing I would think of is if people say that, maybe we should have put in David Ruiz instead of Gresso or Benjamin Kramaski. I'm not sure that was the issue in this game. So I'm not sure if that was the real difference maker. The midfield didn't seem to be that much of a difference maker in this particular game. I thought we needed a little bit more dynamism in the final third, but we're going to talk about that more when we discuss the tactics. So I think let's get into the moments because those are few and far in between.
Listen, the last several games, it feels like all I've done is rewatch the goals and, sort of recite what happened for all of them, because that ends up being, enough to fill, the whole time. But no goals in this game. So we're going to just near misses. And it starts early in the third minute. Franco Negri plays it into Robert Taylor. Robert Taylor has a nice heel click to Luis Suarez, who is past the defense and puts a shot on goal that I do think beats a lot of keepers, but it didn't beat Pedro Gallesi. Third minute, and Inter Miami gets off to a really hot start. Another just a few minutes later, in the 7th minute, Matías Rojas plays a ball over the top to Franco Negri, who's wide open, and then he passes it back to Robert Taylor, who shoots but is blocked by Brecalo, who does a nice job of getting back. Inter Miami got off to a really hot start, and it seemed like this was a game where we took control right away, which we haven't always done, and we were on the front foot, and we were creating, and it felt like, okay, no Messi, no problem. It felt like we had a little mojo going, and then it didn't result in anything, and that really kind of ended, by the 10th minute. But anything on those two plays?
That start was actually one of the best starts that we've had, barring the goal. Those two opportunities were really, really good. And I thought that would be a sign for the game to come. was under the impression that this was going to be another 5-0 if things go along the same way. Obviously, that didn't happen, but great start. We didn't concede we didn't concede, period. And it looked like everyone seemed switched on and ready to go. So I was really excited by that opportunity. With the Negri chance, I thought he could have just taken a shot there.
I did too.
Yeah, I don't think Robert Taylor was in a position to actually shoot because he had a player covering him. So I was disappointed there. But overall, great chances.
Yeah, Franco Negri's maybe not a huge goal scorer, and I think the ball was on his right foot, which is also not his better foot. And so if you see Robert Taylor coming in the corner of your eye, I don't hate him for making the decision, though I'm not sure it was the right one. But things did sort of settle in for Orlando City relatively quickly. The next big moment that I wanted to talk about was Ojeda with a shot in the 32nd minute. Beautiful collection, let me say. Turns with the ball in the pass and then shoots on the first touch. Drake Callender with an incredible save, gets down very quickly. I encourage you guys to go look at our Twitter account because I posted a GIF of this, and you can see, even as the play's in slow motion, how fast Drake Callender gets to the floor to save it. Possibly his best save of the entire season, or at least since the early growing. And then just a minute later, Luis Muriel has a really nice shot from distance, and Drake Callender has to make a diving save. It felt like after about the 10th minute, through most of this first half, Orlando City was actually the team that was more threatening, more in control of the game and doing what their game plan dictated. And I think we saw that play out where Inter Miami had a few balls over the top, but it wasn't particularly dangerous, and it was Orlando City that had a few more dangerous opportunities. That notwithstanding a 35th minute free kick opportunity by Matías Rojas. That was just a really nice free kick. It was his only shot of the game, which I do think is noteworthy. Pedro Gillespie, it was kind of at Pedro Gillespie, but still, nice for a free kick to hit the target and to make it threatening. And that's really all I had for the first half. Lots of missed opportunities.
Yeah, the statistics for the overall game are fairly, I don't want to say even, because Orlando City definitely had more chances. They had about 14 total shots. In the first half, they had more shots than us. Goalkeeper saves were equal. Big chances. Miami had the bigger chances, which I think the first two were literally in the first 30 seconds of the game. So, yeah, I agree with you. It just didn't seem like too much was happening. Orlando was threatening a little bit. They were in control a little bit, but Inter Miami just seemed to be able to deal with a lot of their threats. It didn't seem like we were completely under the cosh at any point. It was quite evenly balanced, and I thought to myself that this is probably the first time that I've seen Inter Miami where it just looks a balanced game. The first half just looks like it's fairly even across the pitch. None of the teams are dominating entirely, and it just looks like a comfortable half. And I thought, okay, we're going to turn it up in the second half when we go in, and I was wrong.
Yeah, it feels like over the last couple of weeks, we've gotten some really good second half adjustments from Tata Martino, from the changes he made, not just tactically, but also with his substitutions. We've seen him be a little bit more aggressive to try and create a difference. I thought they tried to change things and it got worse in the second half. It was, honestly, it got even worse in the second half. I only wrote down two plays worthy of mention. In the 54th minute, Julian Gressel sort of floated across into Luis Suárez, and Wilder Cartagena did a really nice job getting ahead on it to deflect it. Or I think Luis Suárez had a chance on goal there. And then in the 74th minute, Sergio Busquets finds Jordi Alba making one of those runs, and he puts the cross in. And I was convinced as this play was happening, this was going to be the goal. Campana in a perfect spot to receive it. But again, Wilder Cartagena with a really nice reach out with his leg to deflect the pass and put it out of bounds. And that was it really for Inter Miami in the second half. Orlando City did a few things, and we'll talk about those when we talk about their strategy. But to me, that was it from the second half.
63% possession. We had 63% possession, and we had zero big chances created. What does that say about this game? awful. That's absolutely terrible.
Can I ask you a question? Just while we'll talk about Orlando City in a second, but did you feel like at any point anyone other than Luis Suarez or Robert Taylor was goal dangerous in a position to score a goal? Maybe the Matías Rojas free kick, and that's it.
I'm not even sure if Robert Taylor was in any position to. I don't think he had a great game. I don't think he was too threatening. I wish he had been more attacking in his play. But yeah, no, I don't think so. Everyone just seemed to be playing behind the ball, and it was too safe. It was too easy. It didn't feel like a rivalry. Where was the oomph, for lack of a better word?
Maybe that's exactly what the rivalry feels like, where you're too afraid to lose that you're not going for the win.
Yeah, I think we played into Orlando City's hands. They were conservative in the way they set up. We also went with a little bit more conservatism in our play. The 63% possession in that second half just completely sums it up. We had the ball and we were just pinging it around in the back of in the second half, in our own half. And I'd love to see who was the player who had the most touches, because I'm pretty sure it was one of our defenders.
Yeah. Let's talk about Orlando City, though, because it wasn't a great game from us like the last 5 or 6 have been. And so it hasn't felt like we've needed to talk about the other team very much lately, especially when you're winning by 3 or 4 goals. This game feels like a little bit different. They did a good job setting up low, making it difficult to create opportunities. Wilder Cartagena, who's normally a 6, played as a center back, and I thought he did a phenomenal job. Talk to me about how they set up and why it was so effective.
Yeah, the 3-5-2 really worked in their favor. They defended with all 10 men, and they kept with a compact block. They were not that expansive. They definitely created chances. It wasn't like they weren't creating chances. They had shots on goal, but they weren't doing that at the expense of leaving themselves open or leaving wide open spaces. I felt like having 2 strikers be involved in the defense worked in their favor a little bit, because they were able to start I don't want to say press, because it wasn't really a press, but the entire line was a lot further back. So we had a lot of bodies to get through in the middle. I'd love to see the heat map for this game, because it felt like they were playing largely in their own half, with then eventually venturing out a little bit when they have control of the ball. But whenever Miami had ball, I think all 10 players of Inter or all 11 players of Orlando were behind the ball and just defending.
Yeah, they did a good job of staying disciplined. This team has not played in that system traditionally. They came with a back 3. They played it for the first time over the weekend against Philadelphia, and it did get them a 3-2 win, but they gave up 29 shots on goal. So it's hard to say that it was particularly effective, especially defensively. And they put on a lot of their attacking players in the front 6. So yeah, it's disappointing to leave this game not having created a ton of opportunities. I think we had something like 6 shots on goal, or 6 shots total, and that might be generous. They sat back in a low block, I think, shifting from a mid block, but when Inter Miami got the ball into sustained possession, they sat really deep into a very low block, very tight, not a lot of width, exactly the way we always say is the way to beat Inter Miami. Now, we normally specify that's when Lionel Messi's on the pitch, because that's the area that Messi loves to operate in. But it's sort of, it worked for them in this game too, because Inter Miami didn't have any creative playmakers seemingly on the pitch that were going to do anything against a low block. Our most effective chances came mostly from Matías Rojas hitting balls over the back line and us running underneath them. And so when they sat back, it was particularly effective.
Yeah, I don't even remember seeing Torres Angulo. Yes, he was a little bit involved in the game, but I don't remember seeing Torres being too involved in the final third. Maguire, don't remember him having a threatening chance. Muriel was a little bit. He did have a few, I think a couple of chances, but overall, it didn't seem like Orlando City was out there to win a game. It felt like they were comfortable in not embarrassing themselves like they did last time, and their game plan worked. And I think they'd be happy with the 1 point, with the scoreline, because this was Inter Miami's game to win, and they didn't.
I don't know, man. I think that they should, at least their fans should be disappointed, not with the result, but in the effort to score, right? If you get a 2-2 draw, I think they feel better about that than a 0-0 draw, because they played 7 offensive players, right? Their entire middle 5 are sort of offensive-minded players, and then a front 2 of Muriel and Maguire, who are, on paper, 2 of the better strikers in the league. And to not get a goal, especially to not threaten Drake Callender a ton. He had a couple nice saves, and we talked about him, but it wasn't like menacing in a way that you'd expect for a team with that many offensive players.
But put it in the context of this game, right? Orlando's coming into it with a really bad form. They haven't been performing that well. Expectations have been high of them this season, and they've just not hit the stride yet, at least. And then there's Inter Miami on the other side of things, who are absolutely flying, dispatching their opposition like it's nothing. And coming into this game, that dynamic, you want to make sure you're not one of those teams that loses badly against Inter Miami, your rival, especially the second time in the season. So overall, in terms of what the context of this game was and how Orlando has been playing, I think they did well. They should be fine with that 1 point. But yeah,
I'm not really suggesting that they didn't play to the result that they were hoping for. I'm just saying, like, with that lineup, you would expect and hope for more offensive output.
A little bit more gumption in that final third from them.
Yeah. Can we talk about Wilder Cartagena? He was their central center back. He's generally a 6 for them in a sort of a 4-2-3-1, but he pulls back into that back 3. They're very low on center backs, and so that's why he was deputized for that position. I thought he was the player of the match. I thought he was phenomenal in that position, especially considering that's not his natural position. Did he stand out to you in a way that made you go, wow, or was he just solid? Because it felt like there was 2 or 3 opportunities that he was directly responsible for shutting down.
He didn't seem out of place, which is a big compliment to him, considering he's a CDM. And he's playing as a single center back, considering that the other 2 are right center backs and left center backs. So big compliments to him. I think he had a fantastic game. I don't think he was amazing or brilliant. He did his job really well, and that's saying something, considering that he was playing out of position. And I agree with you. He was probably one of the reasons that we weren't able to unlock that defense. He was the sole reason that we weren't able to unlock that defense, because he shut us down. He stayed compact. He stayed disciplined in his positioning, and we just didn't have the answers to try and break them down.
Okay, let's talk about the final 10 minutes, because they did something that we've seen other teams do in the first 10 minutes. And once I saw it from them, I was really scared. Sporting Kansas City, Nashville, a couple of teams on this run have come after us early and often to try and, with the high press, to try and create opportunities. And it's resulted in early goals frequently. Sporting KC did it. Nashville did it, right, et cetera, et cetera. And Orlando City didn't do that. And instead, they saved it for the last 10 minutes of the game, especially once Aviles goes down. You're throwing Christoph on there, he's not in the game, right? He just comes on as a sub. Were you scared, freaking out in these last 10 minutes, or was this just sort of business as usual?
No, I was a little bit scared, because this would have been such a bad podcast to record if we'd conceded like a last minute goal and lost this game 1-0. That would have been terrible. And I was I was a little bit worried that we were going to concede in the last 10 minutes. Was the opportunity that one of their, I think it was Muriel, who had or Angulo, who had a one-on-one opportunity with Drake Callender, and then Freire recovered and Wigan recovered and eventually booted the ball out. But was that before or after Christoph came on? Because I don't remember. But yeah, I'm just happy that our defense was able to repel anything that they threw at us, because I was worried once Aviles went down with that cramp that having Christoph on wouldn't really help the case at all.
Okay, I guess that's all I have for Orlando City. I mean, I
will
thought their
say
strikers.
this though,
Yeah, go ahead.
we, unlike other games, we didn't really push for a winner. It didn't feel like we were pushing for a winner. And it's so frustrating because normally we always have that extra bit of engine in us, that extra bit of spark, that especially in that second half where we're able to turn it up a lot higher. It just felt like we didn't get out of the third gear at all, which I think was responsible for us feeling a little bit defensively secure as well, because then we didn't leave ourselves completely exposed in transition, and our defense was quite solid in this game. Let's be honest, they had a couple of opportunities that they had to deal with, and they dealt with it well as a single unit. So it just felt like we didn't do enough to win this game, and honestly there shouldn't be any complaints about why the scoreline ended 0-0, because it wasn't like the Montreal game where we went in with a Hail Mary throwing the kitchen sink at their net, and we weren't able to score and lost that game. It felt like, yeah, we didn't try enough in this game. So a 0-0 seems justified, honestly, at the end of the day.
Well, let's talk about it, because I agree with you. I didn't think that there was a ton of urgency. I wonder how much of that is a result of you taking Luis Suárez off early. And that sort of
Very
be a
early,
signal to the team that's maybe, we're okay with the draw. Again, we had that chance with Alba that he created for Campana that, Cartagena made a nice play on. But other than that, for the final 15 minutes of the game, Orlando City was much more likely to score based on the flow of the game. And I talk about how they pressed and they seemingly were at least trying something to go for it in a way that Miami didn't really have a response for. So I agree. And I think that's disappointing as a fan, especially against your rival, especially when your defense is held up very well. And I don't know.
Yeah. Also, I was a little bit surprised as to why Suarez came off quite early in the game. I would have expected him to stay on at least till the 80th minute, maybe, because it wasn't necessary to take him off that early. I'm looking for the time when he was taken off. 64th minute, yeah. I don't know, man. That was not the best move for my liking.
Yeah, I mean, all the substitutes were defensive other than Jordi Alba coming on, right? I like Leo Campana. I disagree. I think that's a defensive substitution. When you put on Leo Alfonso for Robert Taylor, you're saying we don't need a goal. You were saying we need someone that's very athletic that can stretch the defense and maybe run over the top. But really, you want a guy that's going to run and be legs and athletic and press and be pesky in comparison to Robert Taylor. And then Kramaski for Ruiz is a defensive substitution as well. So I'm okay. My overarching picture, question is, yes, I am okay with a draw in this game because we've been on a great run and it's a game away from home against a rival, and away from home is always difficult in this league. But nothing that the coaching staff did or the players did indicated that they were trying to go for it in the second half. So yeah, do you think the coaching staff was just okay with let's get a 0-0 draw and go home?
I'm not sure, because this was one of the games where we spoke about the bench, and there didn't seem to be too many game changers in this bench either. Like, if you play someone like Messi in this starting 11, you automatically take out either Robert Taylor or Benjamin Kramaski. And those two players coming off the bench feels a lot better than Ruiz or Afonso coming off the bench. So without Diego Gomez, without Redondo, it just feels like we're a little bit shorthanded. Not shorthanded, but there's a little bit of a spark missing in terms of game changers who can actually make a difference off the bench. Campana's a great utility player, but I wouldn't want Suarez to come off at the expense of Campana coming on, because I'm not sure if that's the same level of game-changing substitution. That's more of we want to be a little bit more defensively solid, have a bigger body up top who we can pop the balls into. It's not someone who automatically score a goal or create threats as soon as he gets on. So I thought we were a little bit underhanded in the on the bench, and that might have been one of the reasons why Tata and the coaching staff didn't really have that many options to change the game or affect the change. But maybe that's just me being rational a little bit too much and giving them too much credit.
Yeah, and maybe they had too much of an eye for this game tomorrow night. We would think as fans that the Orlando City game is more important, but this team hasn't played a midweek game since Monterrey, and maybe the coaching staff felt getting the 3 points at home against DC is actually a priority over playing at Orlando, and then just getting anything in Orlando is sort of a win. Disappointing as a fan because, again, they're our rivals, and I want to beat them, especially because this felt like a golden opportunity to get to do the double over them. But yeah, Suárez coming off early to me just screams, we want to save you for Saturday. He was frustrated seemingly to come off. And then, Campana's fine. But again, if you want to score, throw Campana on there with Luis Suárez and have two guys up top that you feel comfortable with, right? It's not a shot on Campana. It's just he's not Luis Suárez. And so put them both together if you want to go for offense. And if you want to be more defensive, then you put Campana on to run and be more of a threat in defensive set pieces and those types of things. So I was disappointed with that. And maybe if they win tomorrow night against DC, you feel fine. And it's just, you chalk it up as a mid-season, midweek game that you didn't have the legs for. But again, this team is supposed to be built deep enough to be able to go after every game and to go after every competition. And I don't know, it didn't feel like there was that much urgency in this game, either from the players or the coaching staff.
Yep.
Can we talk about, because to me, this is the most interesting thing, is why, at least for the first 65 minutes, right? We had a solid starting 11. We talked about that. Why weren't they more dangerous, right? They got two chances in the first 7 minutes, but other than that, they didn't create a lot of opportunities. And I have my theory, but why do you think we weren't more dangerous with the ball in possession?
A couple of things. For me, I think we played very slowly. Our pace and our tempo was very, very slow. We were able to keep the ball because we weren't making those quick line-breaking passes that we normally do that sometimes makes us lose the balls. I think we controlled the play really well, but that was also because Gressel and Busquets were slowing down the game quite a bit. Which allows us to stay in possession of the ball, but we just didn't move that low block or that mid block fast enough, didn't create enough gaps in the middle to have someone like a Kramaski run into the spaces, have someone like a Robert Taylor run in behind the defense. It just felt like we were playing at a much more lethargic pace than we usually do with Messi, because with Messi, you're constantly passing 1-2 back and forth, and then you're in behind the defense immediately. I didn't see those combinations happen this time around as much as we normally do. Second, I think Busquets played deeper than I would want him to, especially when it's such a low block and it's such a mid block. I would have expected him to push up much higher, which he did not. And then Matías Rojas, I think he tried a little bit too hard to be the creator because that was his responsibility in this team without Messi. He was getting on the ball, spraying the passes off, trying to get something trying to create something, trying to make something happen. Sometimes his balls were a little bit iffy, weren't the best, but at least he was trying. I thought he was trying a little too hard. He should have been in that number 8, 10, final third position rather than next to Busquets or next to Gressel, because he is more effective when he's running at the defense, when he's closer to the penalty spot, when he has goal scoring opportunities in front of him. I thought we missed that slight link between Busquets, Rojas, and Messi. And that's why we weren't able to progress, or we were able to progress, but we weren't able to exploit the final third as well as we normally would.
In that first game that he showed up for us against the New England Revolution, he got a 15-minute cameo in the left wing spot. And that is something, what he did in those 15 minutes is something we haven't seen since. He played as like a real winger. And I thought that's what we were going to get in this game, just on the opposite side where he's more comfortable. But I don't think at any point, perhaps in the whole game, he was in the final 18 yards of the pitch trying to be dangerous. And to me, that was the fundamental flaw. I don't want to criticize Rojas too much because he's still finding his way in this team. He's still, building chemistry, all those things. He's still trying to understand his role, especially his role without Messi, right? He's never been there yet. So I think he was trying to be Messi. He was trying to come back and hit the balls over the top and be quick with it. And, he was trying to make passes that you need Messi's vision to have. And he doesn't have Messi's vision. So he turned the ball over a couple times.
Or he has Messi's vision, obvious. Just not the execution.
Well, sure. Though I would say he didn't have the vision, right? He passed the ball a few times to just a waiting defender, and because he just didn't see him. But to me, he needed to be higher up the pitch, not solely as a creator from, a farther back, but a player that could be goal dangerous. And aside from that free kick, which was a set piece, right? He never was in a position to score a goal. Not that he ever, even if he wasn't on the ball, he never got himself into a position where if one or two things happened, he could have scored. He was always way too far back for that. And so I don't know if that was tactical. I don't really want to blame Tata for that because I think part of that could just be, Matías realizing Messi's not here. Let me do the things that Messi does, and I'll try and make an impact that way as a creator. And it just didn't come off clearly because they didn't score. So to me, that was the biggest thing. You touched on my second biggest point, which is Sergio Busquets. He played on the back line. We talk about this every episode, so I won't harp on it too much. But he is a guy that can unlock a defense in the final third. I'm done with even wanting him to be an 8. I want him to be a 10 on this team. He will combine so well, especially when Messi's not there, but he will combine so well with Messi and Suárez and Jordi Alba making those runs and Robert Taylor and Diego Gomez making runs out of the back. Like, let him be up there. He doesn't need to be on the back line. And the reason that Tata feels the need to put him in the back line is because he doesn't trust Toto Aviles to be comfortable with the ball. He doesn't trust Julian Gressel to be safe with the ball. And he doesn't trust Benjamin Kramaski to be safe with the ball. And so if you don't trust any of those three players, you have to replace one of them with a guy that you do trust to be safe on the ball. I'm hoping that's Federico Redondo.
Yeah, I was going to say at least Federico Redondo is coming back.
I think it could be Yannick Bright too. I would love to see that. I don't think we're going to get that anytime soon. But if it is Federico Redondo, I'm very happy with him back there too. And then you allow Julian Gressel and Sergio Busquets, or Busquets and Kramaski, or Busquets and then Ruiz staying a little bit farther back. But you just get Busquets higher up the ball, higher up the pitch. I didn't mean to harp on this so much, but the elite, super elite players that you have that are incredibly technical players that are incredible players, have great vision. The world-class players you have, those are the guys that are going to break down low blocks for you. Those are going to be the guys that solve problems for you. And so get them in a position to solve those problems.
Do you think if he would have brought on Yannick Bright slightly earlier, I mean, he didn't bring on Yannick Bright in this game, did he? I don't even remember. Yeah. But if he would have brought in Yannick Bright in like the 60th minute, that sounds like a defensive substitution, but I think in this game, it might actually have been a really good substitution because it would allow Sergio Busquets to be slightly further up and do exactly what you just said, try and affect the game from the final third. I also think Gressel isn't suited for this style of play specifically because he slows the game down too much. He likes to have time on the ball. He likes to dwell on the ball and take his time to pick the pass. But that's just not how this team plays. This team likes to play dynamic. This team likes to play quick. There were no given goals without Messi in this game. What's that saying about this team? And with regards to Rojas, I'm not sure whether that was his decision to play a little bit of that Messi role, whether Tata instructed him to play that Messi role. But I would have wanted him and Robert Taylor to stretch that defense out a little bit, because that's how you create the spaces. Make those defenders work for it by stretching that back line out. And then maybe your other runners off the ball, like Gressel and Kremaski can run in behind. It's just basic. It's not even tactical knowledge. It's just how you play football and create spaces. That's what we did against DC United. It was great to watch. But
Give me a quick hint. Are we going to talk about Julian Gressel later when we give out awards?
I don't have an award for him.
Okay. Julian Gressel has lost some confidence. I remember the other Orlando City game when we won 5-0, and that was his best game as an Inter Miami player. He got out into that right wing and was whipping in crosses. It wasn't methodical. It wasn't slow. He got on the ball. He whipped it in. Suárez got on the end of it. He was good. He had good vision. He made a difference right away. But it's in that high roll up the pitch where he can have some space and just whip in those crosses. And he can't do that from the midfield because he's a from the right to the center crosser. He needs to be on the right side of the pitch. And in the midfield, he can't do that, but he has to stay centrally because he has defensive responsibility. He has midfield responsibilities. So he can't just be constantly getting up there unless the game's gotten wide open. And, if it's a 2-goal game and the other team's trying to make a comeback or whatever, then you have some space and you can do some creating. But in a 0-0 game, it's all compact. There's no time or space or room for Gressel to get up there and try and make those whips across. So, yes, the style just doesn't fit him right now. And I think it's now caused him to lose a little bit of confidence where he has become a little bit slower. He doesn't want to make the wrong decision. And I'll stop crucifying him because at this point, I don't even think it's his fault.
I don't blame him. He needs to be used better because his balls are really good. He had a fantastic ball into Suárez. He should do more of that. I would have even maybe preferred him to be in the right wing and Rojas to be more central. That might have worked much better. But now that I think about it, I take back my previous statement of can the coaching staff actually do much with how the game played out? Yes, they can. I think switch it up tactically a little bit, put Gressel in his more comfortable position. Yeah,
and this is the thing. Even when we talked about the starting lineup, you were like, this is the 11 you'd go to. And it's not. You wouldn't put Gressel in there. But we've become so accustomed to Julian Gressel having to be in there because Tata just does it and does it and does it. But for his own sake, he needs 2 weeks to come off the bench and have an impact in a game that isn't static. He needs to come into a game where we have a 2-goal lead and it's wide open and he can come in and be a playmaker in a way that's going to build his confidence back up. But he'll be back in the starting lineup tomorrow night. So
alas, we'll see him play another 90 minutes. And honestly, I'm really tired of criticizing the poor kid because it's not his fault, man. It's really not his fault. He's a really good player. He would fit into any other MLS team. It's just he's not been able to adapt to the Inter Miami style yet. And Tata's partly to blame for not giving him a certain role that would fit his profile. So we'll see how the season goes on. But for me, I completely agree with you. He needs a bit of a reset, and Tata needs to let go of his stubbornness because, God, it's getting boring at this point.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. Do you agree about Matías Rojas? It just felt like he was playing too deep. And in a game where Robert Taylor hasn't been particularly dynamic outside of the first 10 minutes, by the way, Robert Taylor wasn't getting on the ball a ton either. And then Luis Suárez was sort of on an island by himself. And, he never really had an opportunity outside the first 3 minutes. It just felt like there was not enough players in the final 18 to try and create real opportunities. And so the whole thing was just disjointed. You would have loved to see an adjustment at halftime when the coaching staff gets the guys all together and they can kind of talk through what they're seeing. But it just didn't happen.
The spaces were on the wings. I'm surprised Robert Taylor didn't exploit it as much.
None of them. The left winger, the left back, whether it was Negri or Alba, was the only player exploiting that because Cello wasn't getting up there, and neither was Gressel, and Kremaski wasn't finding good spaces. So nobody really was getting into those dangerous spots.
I think Cello also suffers with the right side defect that we currently have. We've got a player on the right side, regardless if it's Messi, Rojas, or Gressel, who likes to cut in and play centrally, which means that Cello needs to push far up. But if he gets caught on that side, there's no defensive cover. Gressel would normally be the one as the right central midfielder who would cover that space, but he also pushes really high up, which leaves Wigan really, really exposed. So I think he's just now aware of the fact that if he pushes up too high, he leaves his defense quite exposed on that side. So
Yeah.
I think he's just playing according to what's best in terms of the defensive stability for this team.
I totally agree. I don't. That wasn't a criticism for Cello, just
Yeah,
of the team, right? I think that's the right thing from Cello too, to stay back and really
100%.
be picky and selective about when you go forward, because you being back there has been what's made us so much better in transition defense. The Montreal game notwithstanding. Um, but then it's Matías Rojas's responsibility to get up there, or Kramaski. Really, the two of them have to figure it out, and they just didn't in this game. And we get a 0-0 draw as a result. Anything about Tata Martino? I know after the Monterrey game, we wanted to really dedicate some time in each episode to talking just about Tata and how we felt he did, but they've been on a good run lately, and I don't know if we need to really single him out. I didn't love the second half substitutions as they came. It did feel like they were sort of a let's get the draw and get out of here kind of maneuver. The three sub windows were Luis Suárez and Franco Nurgi coming off in the 64th minute for Jordi Alba and Leo Campana. In the 80th minute, Robert Taylor and Benjamin Kramaski coming off for Leo Afonso and David Ruiz. And then in the 86th minute, an injury for Aviles, which brings on Sergei Christoph. Obviously you can only judge them on the first two, but they were defensive subs, and they were let's get out of here with a draw and let's get on the bus and try and get home by midnight, right?
I'm not the biggest fan of Tata Martino, but he's done well. He's got us 5 victories on the trot. Not many complaints from him. Obviously, it's never been perfect, and this is the first clean sheet that we've kept, so there must have been something going right in this game in terms of the defensive stability. But he's not a coach who's tactically adept. He's not going to be a brilliant Pep Guardiola who's going to come in and completely change the game in the 60th minute by making his substitutions or making tactical differences. He loves to stay with what's familiar to him, and that's what he does. And one of the reasons that we saw this game play out the way it did was because Tata does not have too many ideas. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just what you get with a coach of his standards and abilities. So it was, I wouldn't criticize him necessarily, but I thought he could have been a little bit more adventurous with the kind of substitutions that he made. We've already discussed some of the options we've spoken about, and I think Alba was the only offensive substitution that happened in this game. So there are chances that he could have taken, but it felt like he was a little too comfortable going in with the 0-0 draw. And yeah, if that's a decision that the coaching staff made, then okay, that's fine. But I would have preferred for us to be a little bit more adventurous, especially against a rival where we can beat them and they're there for the taking as well.
Yeah, and if you get the result on Wednesday, you can always still try and get the result on Sunday
Exactly.
or Saturday. Before we move on, I would be remiss to not talk about this defense. First clean sheet since the last Orlando City game in early March. 2.5 months between clean sheets. Drake Calendar had a couple nice saves. He looked confident. He came for the ball well. Had a couple saves inside the box. The center back pairing, I thought, played really, really well. I'm sure we'll talk about both of them in our awards section.
Yep.
And then the fullbacks, as we've mentioned every time since that Sporting Kansas City game, when Negri is back there and Cello's back there, the whole defense is just more structured, is better against transition opportunities. You feel better about. They feel like a real coordinated defense, and I like it, and it makes me comfortable and happy.
Yeah, it's a unit now. It's functioning really well. This is our starting defense. I pray to whatever gods there are out there in the world that none of these 4 get injured long term, because the stability is starting to come out. I'm feeling a lot more comfortable in their abilities. It's not perfect by any means, but it's what we have. And they're starting to show that they can hold their own in that back line, which is great. especially with the defensive woes that we've had this season, I will take mediocrity at this point in time. And it's a lot more than mediocrity. It's an above average defense, but they're doing a good job. They had some troubles this game. There were instances where Orlando was threatening. They were threatening to get in behind. They had chances on goal. That one opportunity that I mentioned earlier where they almost ran through one-on-one with Calendar. All three of our defenders, I think it was Freire, Aviles, and Wigan, who were all back there getting the ball off of that one Orlando City player. So they're working really well together, and they were the biggest talking point of this game, the biggest positive out of this game, that them as a collective unit, including Drake Callender, was able to keep a clean sheet because they've needed it and they deserved it in this game.
Those five, Cello, Aviles, Freire, Franco Negri, and Drake Callender, have played together all of the last 5 games since the Sporting Kansas City game, other than the Montreal game where Aviles went out for a yellow card and Kristoff replaced him. But that 5 has been a unit, and I think that was a really good word to describe them. In those 5 games, if you discount the 98th minute penalty against the Red Bulls, they've given up about 1 goal a game. And in the previous 8 games before that, we had been giving up over 2 goals a game. Basically from the last Orlando City game, the next game up until Jordi Alba gets hurt in that Sporting Kansas City game. And so the results also indicate that this has been a much better team, especially in transition. They have turned the ball over even through that pace in that period, but they haven't been killed in transition as much as they had been. And in fact, the one time that they did give up 2 goals was against Montreal in that first half, where they were being tactically put out of place. So those 4 I feel really comfortable with. And I think using the word unit is right because they've been playing as a unit. They've been watching each other make runs when appropriate. And they've built some great chemistry, especially between that back 2. It's going to get broken up, though, because Jordi Alba's coming back. But let's save all of that. I do want to contextualize this game a little bit, think big picture about what this game means for what Inter Miami can look forward to without Lionel Messi over the next couple months. It does sound like he'll be back for tomorrow night's game against DC United, but he will be gone for the Copa America. And then before we do, just contextualizing a road draw against your rival in the MLS, it's not a bad result. It's not something to complain about. If we went back 4 months and we sort of plotted out this season and how we were going to get to where we wanted to get to, you could easily mark this up as a draw and be comfortable with it. And in fact, back when we thought Orlando City was going to be really good, I think we would be happy with the 0-0 draw. So I think at the end of the day, you have to be comfortable with this result. It's okay. The performance was disappointing because of how well we've been playing lately, but it's our first midweek game since we started playing so well, and we were out without our best player. And any team in MLS, if you take off their best player, it's going to be significantly worse. That's not a Miami thing. And so I think just the pure result you have to feel decent about.
And there are going to be a few more of these in the near future once Messi leaves, because we're not going to have that spark to, take us to that next level where we want to break teams down. So we need to get used to it a little bit. As Inter Miami fans, we're very spoiled in terms of the quality of this team and what it does to opposition. So, yeah, I think it's a sign of things to come in terms of our next few games once Messi's not available. But I do think this team has enough quality to be able to still win games like these without Lionel Messi, and hopefully we can now eventually go on to find that bit of form when Messi is not in the starting 11 or on the bench, because we can't always be reliant on him, and we need to think about games where we don't have him as the magic effect.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it, because did we learn anything about what this team is and can be without Messi? It feels like this was the first time that we got the team we wanted, with that, like, this is the team the best we could hope for once Messi leaves for Copa America is this 11. Redondo is going to miss time because of the Olympics. Diego Gomez might be at both the Copa America and the Olympics. So this feels like the best case scenario for the Copa America period of time. And yet we didn't get the job done, and we didn't look particularly impressive against a not great team. I'm okay chalking it up to Matías Rojas as the difference maker, and he wasn't prepared to do that because of how long he's been with the team, and he was still figuring out his role. And if you give him that role for 2 or 3 games, he's going to be a lot more productive. But yeah, is it psychological or is it actually tactical at this point?
I think it's psychological, partly tactical. This team needs to be set up slightly differently with these players on the pitch. You need to assign, I think, either play Gresso in the right wing role or play Gresso in like the pseudo 6 role, because he's not going to have that level of impact that we want from him in that final third. So if you want to make that difference, if you want to continue to be attacking and threatening in that final third, you need Busquets up the pitch. So there are a few permutations, a few combinations that we can try out and change things even with these players. And secondly, it's psychological. And also, I think the players didn't perform up to their level in this game, especially Robert Taylor, Benjamin Kramaski. So once a few things can be sorted out, tweaked a little bit, I do believe this team will be able to get the job done and be a lot better than they were, because it felt like we were always playing in that third gear and we just didn't find the fourth gear. It's just a matter of how we adjust a few things here and there to be able to get to that fourth gear.
You know what I want to see next game without Messi? I want to see a 4-2-3-1 with Sergio Busquets as the 10 and 2 defensive-minded midfielders behind him, whether it's Redondo and Bright or Ruiz and Bright. But that's what I really want to see. I want it to be Sergio Busquets dictating play in possession with the ball, not Matías Rojas, not Robert Taylor, not your fullbacks. I want it to be Sergio Busquets. He is in great form. He had some early season troubles with turnovers, but he's cleared all of that up. He was really good in this game, by the way. I don't think we mentioned how good he was. He was all over the place, doing a lot, getting a lot in the, pressing and getting forward defensively. But when we had the ball, he was just sitting back there on that back line, and it wasn't very helpful. And so I want to see him as the 10 with a very solid pair of 6s and a back line behind him, so you can feel comfortable about the defense without him playing a large role. And I want him to be the guy getting forward and dictating play. That's what I would love to see. I don't think Tata Martino is going to do it, but to me, that could be a grand solution. And then you just have Matías Rojas doing what he does, Luis Suárez doing what he does, and Robert Taylor doing what he does, or Diego Gomez or whoever's available at that point, and just let Busquets orchestrate the offense instead of orchestrating the team from the back. I would love to see that. To me, that's the next thing I would try.
That would be spicy. I would really, really enjoy that. I'm not sure if we're ever going to see that happen, but one can hope, right?
Even if it's for a half, you know what I mean? Like if in this game we took out when did we make the subs? If we took out Kramaski and we put on Yannick Bright, and we took off if we took off Kramaski and Gressel at the same time and put on Bright and Ruiz, and they were a pair of 6s, and you just put on for 25 minutes while you're trying to get a result, like that is, to me, something I would really want to see, because Messi is so good in that final third. He always makes the right decisions. He has pinpoint passes, all of those things. And so the player most likely to replicate that is Sergio Busquets. Anything else before we go on to awards?
There goes my award for Sergio Busquets.
I apologize.
Let's do it, man. Let's get to the fun bit of this podcast.
Yeah, I don't know how we talked about that game for an hour and not gone into individual awards. Bravo to us for finding a way to make that happen. But as always, we give out 6 awards on this show after every game: a man of the match, a Miami man of the match, a heron that flew north, and then 2 individual awards each. This week, this midweek game, I get the pleasure of giving out the man of the match because Saur gave it out over the weekend. And any guesses where I'm going with this?
Yeah. King Calendar has to be.
I think there's some real options. and I won't talk about any of them other than Drake Callender because I'm sure we'll talk about all of them over the next couple of minutes. But you get a clean sheet, and he was the reason, and that was a phenomenal save in the 32nd minute. It's his best save since the very beginning of the season. I know he had a couple good ones against Galaxy, so maybe not his best of the season, but right up there and the best in a long time. Hopefully this is a performance that gives him a little bit of confidence going forward because he earned it. He was good. He looked confident. He was, and ultimately he's the reason you got a result because he made those saves.
Yeah, he looked sharp. He looked back to his old levels we've come to expect from him, and I'm just glad that he was able to find some confidence because he made some two really good saves back to back as well. One where he got down low, and then one that he caught in the air, which I was really surprised by because I would have expected him to palm it out. So it looked like he was quite confident in this game, and he just had a really good go of it compared to some of the other players who were suffering.
And listen, we had one amazing game against Orlando City and one mediocre game against Orlando City this season, but not Drake Callender. He had 2 clean sheets
Amazing
against
games,
Orlando
yeah.
City. So, got to give him props for that. And so
He shows up when it matters.
For those reasons, he's my man of the match.
And we could have lost this game if he hadn't made some of those saves. Yeah. So there you go.
Although I will say, there's also the possibility that this team just needs the other team to score first for them to wake up. And if we had allowed them 1 goal, we would have gone on to score 3 or 4. And it was just because they couldn't find a way to score that first goal that we just decided, well, we don't even have to try yet.
Watch Toto Avila shoot one in the back of our own net in that first minute against DC United just because we can't score a goal without them scoring first.
If we concede in the first 10 minutes, you know why. Why.
Yeah. It's a precedent. It has to happen. It's the rule of the land now.
Okay. Our second award, the Heron That Flew North. This award goes to the player that wasn't doing the right thing. The Heron, Florida Herons, they don't fly anywhere for the winter. And so if you're doing that, you're doing the wrong thing. And that's why the Heron That Flew North for this episode goes to.
He's normally a ballet dancer, but it looks like he left his shoes back home for this game in Fort Lauderdale. It's Luis Suárez. I don't know, man. It was a hard award to give out because I don't think anybody had a particularly bad game, but I don't think anybody had a particularly great game, apart from obviously the defense. And yeah, just by the stats, just by the fact that he didn't really affect the game as we want him to. He had a couple of really good chances in the box in the second half as well. In the first half, obviously, in the first few minutes. In the second half, he had a shot on goal, which was a really weak shot on the keeper, where he could have done better, and I would have expected him to do better. So just overall, he seemed a little bit out of it. He wasn't too involved in the game, disappeared, was taking up decent positions. There was one time where he got onto the end of Gressel's header, but obviously he was covered well by Cartagena, I believe. So yeah, it was a tough outing for him, man. And just by virtue of nobody else being as bad as he was on SofaScore, I give him the Heron That Flew North award today.
Yeah, there was a couple players I think could have been a shout for this award. I didn't think Kremasky had a great game. I didn't think Julian Gressel had a great game. I think you could justify giving this to Matías Rojas, but I don't really have a problem with it. We've come to expect Luis Suárez to have an impact on every game, and so he didn't get a ton of great service, but he did get a couple chances. And you did mention that one early in the second half where he didn't. Maybe it was late in the first half. He just didn't get a good shot off. I do think that play was offsides anyways, but yeah, I have no problem with this. Okay, my first award is the finger wag.
Sergio Busquets.
You got a reason behind that?
Yeah, because we all questioned him about how good he is and how he's lost pace and he's not doing too well. And then he just comes back with some really good performances in the last few games. You're like, no, son, I'm still the player I am.
That is an excellent theory, but it is
Thank you.
wrong.
Oh, come on.
The player that made the finger wag famous in American sports was Dikembe Mutombo. And he was a big center in basketball, and he would swat away players when they came in for layups. And that's why, like Dikembe Mutombo, I'm giving this to Toto Aviles, because if you come into the 18-yard box on transition, you better go really hard. You better get your shot off early, because Toto Aviles comes in hard. He makes those last man tackles like he doesn't care. He is fearless, and he should get up and wag his finger at the opposition every time, because he did it a couple times today, and he is fearless, and he makes it happen, man. He's really good defensively. We've talked about him playing out of the back and that, but defensively, he's become an excellent player for this team.
Yeah, I had an award for him, and my award was Worth a Damn Award. Instead of Worth a Damn. That was a good play on words. I think that was better than a finger wag award, but I agree with you.
Hold on. Write that down, because that's a great award, and you need to save that for some point this season.
Thank you. I've been quite creative these past few weeks with my awards, guys. So I hope you appreciate all my creativity, because it takes a fair few minutes to think of these. But yeah, I agree with you. Aviles, Freire, both were absolutely phenomenal in this game by their standards. And I love Aviles, man. He's just 19. He gave it his all this game. He was in the right places. His positioning was really good. He didn't necessarily have to play out from the back, which I think is the weakest point of his game. By virtue of us playing this game slower, it helped the defense quite a lot, and they were able to hold on. And Aviles was definitely missed in that last game, and he showed exactly why in this game. Very, very solid.
Can we talk about projecting him forward, though? Because center back has been such a big point of conversation, point of emphasis for fans this season, where we've wanted an excellent number one center back to come in, and people talk about Sergio Ramos, and we mentioned a couple center backs that we would like to come in that summer window with that third DP spot, and yet Freire has been playing well, and he's paid a lot of money, and now, not now, but he's also Toto Aviles has become a high quality defender in this league. And listen, there's not a lot of center backs that are excellent at playing out of the back in this league. And the best you can hope for is a guy who's big, physical, fast, athletic, can get back and defend in transition and one-on-one opportunities and all of those things. And Aviles has really done that. I think since we bought him last summer, he's become better and better. Maybe not to the outstanding degree that Diego Gomez has, but in a similar way, he's become an outstanding player that, to me, is undroppable. And, I love Ian Frey, but I don't think at this point Ian Frey is going to get a ton of minutes, just because Toto Aviles is just not droppable. And so I love that, though. I love that.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. I hope when Ian Frey comes back, he comes back healthy, strong, and challenges Aviles and Freire for that spot, because I don't think Christoph has it in him to be the starting center back. And
he's not, though, right?
Yeah, and he's no longer the starting center back.
It's Freire and Aviles.
But we need somebody to challenge them and compete with them to be able to push their levels up as well, because you don't want them to be too comfortable knowing that, there's nobody behind us who's going to be replacing us anytime soon. But yeah, I agree with you. Aviles and Freire are by far the starting choice right now, and they've been really, really good. They're building a lot of chemistry, and I love that partnership going forward.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much about the partnership, because we might get a Freire award, but yeah, you called it first when you talked about the chemistry, and you were absolutely right, man. You saw it before I did.
I may not get the score lines right, but I do know Bo a little bit.
Okay, what's your first award?
My first award is the Pizza for Breakfast Award.
The Pizza for Breakfast Award is going to go to Matías Rojas, because Matías Rojas had pizza for breakfast, and that's why he didn't feel great during the game, and that's why he didn't want to run into the final third and make runs at the defenders.
I hate the fact that you got it wrong because your explanation is all over the place. For anyone who's had pizza for breakfast, it's great. It's absolutely fantastic. Try a margarita pizza early in the morning, which is just
Cheese pizza.
dry and just so cheese pizza. It's so good, but it's not as good as the real thing, the hot and piping pizza straight out of the oven, right? Matías Rojas is a great player, fantastic player, does really exciting things on the pitch, but he's no Lionel Messi. He is not that hot piping pizza that Messi is. And I think that's what he needs to recognize and not try and do things that Messi would normally do in the pitch. He needs to play his own game. He needs to create his own role on this team when Messi is out of it. And I just felt like the role that he was given in this particular game was just not the right one for him. And he was trying a little bit too hard. He was trying to be too influential when I think it was in the wrong places and at the wrong time. He needed to be, as you mentioned, higher up the pitch. And that's where he's most dangerous. So for me, as great of a player that we think he is and as much of an impact he's had on this team so far, he just needs to make sure he doesn't fall into the trap of trying to be the Messi when Messi's not there.
Yeah, in that first half, he had a lot of just get on the ball and then just put a ball over the top real quick. And it came off for him a couple times. But it did feel like there was a lot of times where he was trying to play like messy balls where you just get on it quick and with that left foot, whip in a forward pass. And he just doesn't, I mentioned earlier, he just doesn't have the same vision that Messi does, which is not a criticism because no one does. But
you're being compared to the best player in the whole world.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not a criticism.
I had an award for him called the Spanglish because I thought he was sort of caught between two different minds where he wanted to be the creator and distributor, but also he was leaving a little bit of himself unavailable for distribution too. And so caught between two minds. I agree with you. I think this is a good award. And he was a player that we thought was going to be a difference maker in this game. And it didn't really come to fruition.
Yep. All right. What's your award?
I'm going to give out the Round of Applause award.
Nico Freire?
It is not Nico Freire.
I'm bad at this game.
I'm
we need
giving
to change the rules.
The Round of Applause award goes to the man who was summoned to do a job, and he did that job, and that job is now over. And he's going to go back to the bench because Jordi Alba is back and healthy and is Jordi Alba, so he's going to start, and he deserves so. But Franco Negri has started the last 5 games since Jordi Alba got hurt against Sporting Kansas City, and he has done a job as well as any backup at any position in this league could be expected to do, and he did it well. And so I just want to give him a round of applause as he exits stage left for the time being, and Jordi Alba comes back into the lineup because Franco Negri was a good player, solid defensively, got forward, and he deserves his kudos for stepping in and filling in, and really the team not missing a beat while he was in there.
Yeah, I had an award that was similar but opposite. I had the sharpest tool in the shed award for Jordi Alba for coming back. But in juxtaposition, I wanted to talk about Negri because he's done such a fantastic job of the last few games that it didn't feel like we were missing the sharpest tool at all. And he's filled in really, really well. And I actually really like him in this team. And it's unfortunate that he's losing his place to Jordi Alba because he would be a starter in any other MLS team. And we just are so much more stable and defensively sound when he's on the pitch. Not that I'm saying that it's not going to be the same as Jordi Alba is there, but it's just a different profile of a player. So, completely agree. Round of applause, man. He's done a really good job, and hopefully he can still start a couple of games here and there, although I don't think he's going to be on the starting 11 sheet as much.
Yeah, it's a shame he's not more flexible as a player. Right? He can't play on the right side. He's too left-footed for that. He can't play as a center back. He doesn't have the physical profile. He's not really athletic enough to play in the midfield. So it's a shame because he's a high-quality player, but he can only play in the one spot. And obviously that spot goes to Jordi Alba. We did see when he first came back, I think against Colorado, we saw Noah Allen at left center back. We saw Franco Negri at left back, and we saw Jordi Alba playing as a left winger. So he might get some game time in some funky formation like that. But I think for the most part, he's done for now.
This game needed a funky formation because it was dead.
That's true. I would have been okay taking off Robert Taylor and just putting on Jordi Alba and watching those two overlap with each other. But yeah, that's my second award because he's done a great job recently, and I thought he deserved to get one.
Yep. All right. The final award for the evening is the Suit is Not Tailored award.
Is that a play on words? Okay, I'm giving it to Rob. I mean, I'm guessing it's Robert Taylor because Robert Taylor didn't feel good because he didn't look good because he didn't get his suit tailored properly going into the game.
Yeah, it was a play on words. You better spell that tailored with a Y because that's just how I want it spelled. He's not been having the best of games in the last couple of games. He seems a little bit off, and I'm not worried for him by any means, but I'm worried for my own draft list that we're going to do very, very soon because I don't want to lose him on from that third spot. For anyone who's wondering what I'm talking about, a few months ago, we did a draft list. We each drafted a player, and Robert Taylor is number 3 in that position. And I fear that his position is in danger. So for me, he hasn't had a couple of good games, and I am hoping he finds his form back and this is just a temporary glitch because he's a fantastic player, and we needed him in this game, man. He was the one who needed to have that little bit of more impetus, a little bit more gumption, a little bit more pace in behind, but he didn't provide that too much.
Yeah, I think going back, I don't know if we're going to end up doing this, but if we went back and watched the game again, really watching him and seeing what he was doing and why he was where he was would be really interesting because it just felt like he just wasn't a part of this game for much of it. He came back after that injury against the New England Revolution, and he looked good in that game. He looked dynamic and athletic, but the last 3 games, he's been kind of a no-show. I don't think it would be a surprise if he doesn't start against DCU tomorrow night with Messi and Rojas on opposite wings. But he's still a good player. And listen, having Robert Taylor off the bench is no joke either. So
top 5 Inter Miami players for sure.
Drake Callender might be coming for that number 3 spot after this game.
No. He's not close.
Any other players? Obviously, Nico Freire, I had an award for him, but it's sort of along the same lines as Toto Aviles. He was really good in this game, and he's been stout, I think is a good way to put it. I didn't notice any really bad turnovers. He seemingly hasn't done that for the last 2 or 3 games, and to me, that was the biggest weakness in his game. And so I've been really happy with him. He's had a couple opportunities in transition and maybe more against Montreal than this game, but where he got back and he played it really well, where it was sort of a 2-on-1 and he split the difference really well and he slowed down the man with the ball, but stayed in position to get back to the other guy if there was a pass. And then that was just like a smart quality play. And you have to make notice of those when it comes. And so he's been stout, man. That's all I can say.
Completely agree with you. Everything you just said, especially in transitions, I think these players have learned to understand how to defend when they're outnumbered. So when there's 2 of them back there, whether it's Freire or Chelo, whether it's Freire or Aviles, they know which position to take and where to be, because against Montreal, especially now that you mention it, there were a few instances where we definitely should have got scored on and we didn't because they were positioned really well. So it's looking good. I'm really liking the look of this backline. Freire was absolutely fantastic. I was smiling to myself because it seems like there's a bit of a paradox between our defense and our front line and how they like to play. So when we play slower, when we control the pace and we slow down the game, it really suits the defense. But then it messes up how we play in the front final third. And when we play quick, when we want to play out the back, when you want to play that 1-2 and get the ball really rolling, the defense struggles a little bit. So maybe that's something that we'll build over time, and it's getting better. But yeah, this is something that came to my mind.
I don't know because when we play with the ball more methodically, we do get high up the pitch, and so you're still in trouble defensively if you turn the ball over in a bad spot. But it just seems like Inter Miami's gotten better at not turning the ball over in bad spots, especially after the first 15 minutes of the game. It feels like it's been a while since that was a problem. Anyone else in this game? I know you mentioned Jordi Alba. He's back. He looked healthy. He looked good. He created an opportunity. I'm sure we will see him have that signature pass from the left wing to Lionel Messi, taking his little step back and scoring. I'm sure that's coming in the next 2 games. But yeah, it's good to have a great player like him back.
Yeah, I think he's going to make so much of a difference. We've gotten used to Negri, obviously, but I think we've forgotten what player Jordi Alba really is. And it's just going to give us so much more going forward. And I'm excited to see him against DC United. I'm thinking about the players. Kramaski didn't have a fantastic game, but he wasn't alone in it. I don't want to criticize the midfield too much and, he'll find his form. I'm sure he's going to be great soon. So overall, I think we've discussed quite a lot of the game. We've gone on for an hour and 20 minutes, and I thought this podcast would end after the first 15 minutes. So I'm glad that we had something to talk about despite how boring the game was.
Just while we have it in the chat, Di Maria coming in the summer, 50% chance it does or doesn't happen. I don't think Inter Miami has made plans for what they're going to do this summer yet. I think they're really waiting to see what happens over the next 10 or 11 games through Copa to see where they're at and how the team's going. I mean, a month ago, we would have said they had to get a center back, but we just talked about how Freda and Aviles have been a lot better lately. So, I think they're okay. Let me pull up the table, because Inter Miami does lose ground atop the table. Cincinnati gets another victory. And so now Inter Miami only 1 point above Cincinnati and 5 points above the Red Bulls, and a pretty big lead on everyone else in the East. But Inter Miami gets a draw. They drop 2 points, and Cincinnati continues to pick up 3. I don't know. It's not where you want to be, right? We talked about this 7-game schedule. We had a podcast dedicated to the 7 games before Copa America. And we thought the team could get 18, 19 points. And now the best that's possible is 19. How are you feeling about the Supporters Shield?
Yeah, it's not great not being able to build that gap up. And I'm a little bit frustrated with that. But at the end of the day, the Supporters Shield is not the trophy that we want. I'm sure we're going to want it. Yeah, but still, if you have to choose between the cup and the Supporters Shield, you obviously pick the cup.
Hey,
but
¿por qué no los dos? Come on, man.
We can't afford to lose so many games going forward. We need to make sure that before Lionel Messi leaves and potentially some other players, build as much of a gap in between Cincinnati and ourselves as we can. So not the best, but I'm sure we'll have plenty of games. Hopefully Cincinnati has a couple of stumbles along the way, and we're going to play them soon anyway. So,
it's unfortunate. The first time we play Cincinnati, will be without Messi. It'll be during Copa America, so we won't be at full strength. But if this Inter Miami team is a team that I think plays really well against Cincinnati, matches up really well, and they do play a back 3, which we haven't done great against this year, but I just think their style versus our style is one we can really take advantage of. So I'm not worried about them in a playoff scenario, but obviously we don't control how many points they get the rest of the season. So it would be nice to see them drop a few. And then just sort of last thoughts about the game and anything you want to, talk about for this DC United game tomorrow.
Well, the fact that we didn't score a goal in this game just only means that we're going to go score 7 against the DC United.
You think we're going to give up 2?
Nah, we don't give up any. Let's just go score 7 and not concede any.
We don't win games unless we concede first.
Okay, 7-1. Let's go with 7-1. Why not?
It does feel like a game where we can put up a crooked number. Messi should be back. We've already gotten the availability report. Jordi Alba in the starting lineup. So we're going to have most of our big guns. That midfield will be probably the same, but it feels like it's there for us tomorrow night.
Going to be hard to contain Benteke. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but we did a good job in that first game, right?
Yeah, we did. We didn't have Messi though, so usually helps our defense when we don't have Messi, which is weird. But yeah, we'll see how that plays out. I think we'll be good for a victory going into that game.
Can I ask you a question? Last thing. We've already played the Red Bulls twice. We've already played Montreal twice. We've already played Orlando City twice, and we'll now have played DC United twice. How do you feel about already playing all of these teams for the second time this year and still not having played Atlanta, Philadelphia, Columbus, Nashville, Charlotte, Cincinnati, even once at Chicago? I mean, we still have 2 games against all of those teams. And yet we're already done with several of the teams we've just played over the last 2 weeks.
That schedule is so wonky. I prefer the Premier League or La Liga, where you first play all teams in one set, then you play all teams in the second set. It's a bit weird because I want to play different teams every week, man. I want to be able to talk about some new teams. Gives us a chance to see some of the teams that we won't normally have a look at otherwise. So I'm not a big fan of the scheduling, and hopefully I would love for them to be scheduled at the same time as the rest of Europe, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But still, it would be better if we can see all of the teams first and then repeat the cycle.
So you don't want that at all. And we will talk about that in an off-season podcast, because we should do a podcast about the things we would change about MLS. But again, in the off-season, anything else about this game before we sign off for the night?
Now, I think we've taken up enough time talking about this. I don't think I have anything more to say. So let's head on to DC United tomorrow.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back for the pregame show tomorrow in the hour before kickoff. That's always a fun way for us to get the nerves off. For anyone listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that is only on YouTube. So please join us, because I don't know about you guys, but I always get nervous in the hour before kickoff, and spending it talking to Saur and making Saur explain why we're going to win is always a great way for me to get over those nerves. So in the hour before kickoff on YouTube, we'll see you guys there. And other than that, I hope you guys have a great night.